Good morning, everyone. Well, another beautiful morning here in this park. We've been here for a month now, and I'm about to extend it one more month. Then we have to be out for a month and come back if we choose to. It is hot though, and this is the 4th of July weekend, and when you watch this, this will be, I'm recording it on the 3rd, it will be the 4th of July. Now we've already had one big night of fireworks, which is Saturday night. So I don't know if there's going to be any more tonight or tomorrow night. They were noisy and brilliant, but they were at the other end of the park and they were low over the water, so I didn't film it. I'm hoping that we can get a better shot later, but if not, they're all over the place. So, in honor of the day, 4th of July, Independence Day, 1776, we're not going to focus on that though, we're going to focus on the key player in it. You know, the Bible is full of key players that made history. But we're going to pick an American for this one. And we're going to talk about what he did. Just to kind of celebrate the day. So it's going to be a non-biblical day from that point of view. I'm not going to read out of the Bible. I may quote some verses, but I'm not going to read out of the Bible. But this is to honor the day in America that we used to be. Our founding fathers set this up as a religious free zone. You're free to worship your God the way you want to, knowing that most of the people here were Christians of some sort and didn't really think that a religion of Satan would come to fruition. Certainly not be tolerated like it is today. So we're going to look at Francis Scott Key. If you're important, I guess you get 3 names. So I'm reading, this is coming from the National Park Service for Fort McHenry. Francis Scott Key stood above the deck of an American truce ship on September 14, 1814, and watched the raising of Fort McHenry's large garrison flag. I mean, it's like 28 by 38 or something. It's just really big. You can see it throughout the harbor. And Fort McHenry is still there, the national monument. And it had just been recently rebuilt and reinforced because their last encounter, they didn't do well. So basically they built ramparts up, they built dirt embankments sloped so that if a shell were to hit it, it would explode out into the water and not affect anything inside. And they put all their tunnels underground for them to be able to walk around and get to various spots. They had cannon embankments and all that kind of stuff, but they made it virtually impossible to take. Can't see. Okay, so continuing on, he had witnessed Britain's 25-hour bombardment of the fort. And for Key, the raising of the American flag was a triumphant symbol of bravery and perseverance. This image inspired Key to write about what he had seen. In 4 stanzas, of which we are used to 1, Key wrote the defense of Fort McHenry, and the word spread like wildfire through the young nation. It became the Star-Spangled Banner, and was soon in the national air like Yankee Doodle and Hail Columbia. In 1931, Key's song was designated as the national anthem of the United States. Okay, so let's do a little bit of history on Francis Key. These were times that were different than today. These were times that people were learning what they needed to do and what they shouldn't be able to do. When you were given freedom, you have to learn how to live within freedom. Yes, you can go beyond the limits of what you should be doing because you're free. So Francis Scott Key was born on August 1st, 1779, just 3 years after our independence, in Frederick County, Maryland. He was raised by a wealthy family on a plantation. Yes, you're going to get the entire story of that. Supported by enslaved labor. It was called terra rubra, red earth. Members of the Key family practiced law, became elected officials, and fought both for and against the British during the American Revolution. Francis Scott Key, or Frankie, was particularly close to his sister Anne Phoebe Charlton Key. He looked back at his childhood fondly and wrote a poem entitled "To My Sister," in which he reflects on the bright hours he spent with her on the family plantation. Okay, so that's who he is. He moved to Annapolis in 1789 to attend preparatory school at St. John's College, where he studied Latin, Greek, mathematics, grammar, and the sciences. He graduated from St. John's and studied law under his uncle, Philip Barton Key, in 1796. In 1802, he married into a prominent Maryland slaveholding family. Again, the times, everybody did it. Both parties, everybody owned slaves. It was bad, but they didn't know any better. Today, this would be abhorrent. Back then, they didn't have a standard to compare it against, which would further complicate his relationship with slavery. He and his wife, Mary Taylor Polly Lloyd, settled in Georgetown, where Key practiced law. He and Polly started a family, and they would eventually have 11 children. They were religious. Most religions teach to have as many kids as you can, especially Catholics. Key's father was forced to auction off terra rubra by economic hardship, and Key took out a substantial loan to purchase the property for $8,500 in 1811. A struggle for financial stability drove Key away from serving in the ministry, which he had considered while he was a young lawyer. And Key was a devout Episcopalian and took an active role in the activities of multiple churches. Okay, Francis Scott Key was a prominent lawyer in Frederick, Maryland, and he made a name for himself in 1807 defending Justice Eric Bolin and Samuel, how do you say this? Swart out? I don't know. Who had been charged with treason in connection with alleged conspiracy designed by Aaron Burr, another historic name you should know. Key served as advisor to Andrew Jackson and served as a district attorney for the District of Columbia, 1833 to 1841. So a notable figure in this area and lawyer. Okay, the War of 1812. Britain didn't like the fact that we declared independence. They didn't like the fact that we were over here making money and they weren't making any off of it. So they took us to war. Key opposed the War of 1812, but served as quartermaster in the Georgetown Artillery against the British. Key served as a volunteer aide to General Walter Smith at the Battle of Bladensburg in August of 1814. He relayed tactical information and reportedly served to inform artillery positions based on his knowledge of the area. Okay, it goes on to talk about him during the war. And he eventually pens defense of Fort McHenry is what he called his little poem. Both the Star-Spangled Banner and the eponymous song written about it are chained to the institution of slavery. Francis Scott Key defended and participated in the institution of slavery, and his personal ownership of other human beings stands opposed to his definition of the United States and the land of the free. The third verse in his song mentions no refuge could save the hireling and the slave. It's not clear what Key meant, but many interpret that as talking about slavery. He could have been referring to foreign troops controlling the Americas, or perhaps an escaped slave. He practiced law until 1843. He's buried in Mount Olivet Cemetery in Frederick, Maryland. Okay, so there's your backdrop. A man of many sides, complicated. But on the event of the battle at Fort McHenry, his sister had a doctor who got arrested for treason by the British. Learn from history, people who are bound to repeat it. Well, they're eventually going to start arresting people for treason in this country, for speaking out against the government. They're trying to do that with our ex-president, Trump, because they don't want him to run again. So they're bringing up every charge they can think of to throw at it, and maybe something will stick. The January 6th event was a staged event to frame people, to make us look bad. It was staged. All right. And I might as well say this because I don't know how much longer I'm going to be on YouTube. The election was fraudulent, and there's proof. But it won't ever come to the front for the main media because they were in favor of it. So, he wrote this 4-stanza poem, of which the first part became the Star-Spangled Banner. The music, the song that it was put to, was written by some guy named Smith in England. It was sung in a gentleman's club, essentially a private bar. So you can imagine how that would sound if you were drunk, singing this song with your other gentleman friends. And it was sung in other pubs as well because they got wind of it. So this was a popular British pub song, essentially. So one more slap in the face to the Britons. We put our Star-Spangled Banner to their British pub song, which they could no longer sing anymore without remembering what we did with it. So let's take a look at his stanzas here, and we can see now the backdrop of this. He went to defend this doctor. He's a lawyer. He found that the person that could release him was on a ship in the harbor. So he gets on this ship, and he is having trouble doing his negotiation, but then he pulls out some letters by some British soldiers who commended this doctor for taking care of them and saving them. And that's what won him over. But because he was on the ship where they were planning on the attack, they wouldn't let him leave. He went on a smaller ship to get there. They eventually put him on that smaller ship in tow for the entire battle until it was over. And then he was released, and the doctor was released. But the British, on their flagship, appropriately named, they did the negotiation. And then from his quiet ship behind, he watched the entire, as we heard, 25-hour battle, lobbing cannonball after cannonball. Now, of course, they had, as it says in the song, rockets at Fort McHenry. These were nothing more than bottle rockets, slightly less capable than what Hamas launches at Israel. They're not, you just light the fuse and step away and they launch into the air, and if you're short, you try to tip it a little bit more. They're bottle rockets. So yeah, they can do damage, but the likelihood of you hitting anybody is rare. And they were within range. But after 25 hours, they were still there. Now, this is our flag at the time. It had 15 stars and stripes. So they were even wider stripes than our current flag. So let's get into the defense of Fort McHenry. Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming. Imagine, we go out for fireworks at night because it's reminiscent of this. Whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight over the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. The flag was above the barriers, the dirt barriers. Big flag. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave, or the land of the free and the home of the brave? So there's our song. But he didn't finish there, he kept going. On the shore dimly seeing through the mists of the deep, where the foe's haughty host in dread silence reposes. What is that which the breeze over the towering steep, as it fitly blows, half conceals, half discloses? Now it catches the gleam of the morning's first beam, in full glory reflected, now shines in the stream. 'Tis the star-spangled banner, oh long may it wave, over the land of the free and the home of the brave. So he gave it the name. And where is that band who so vauntantly swore that the havoc of war and the battle's confusion, a home and a country should leave us no more? Their blood has washed out their foul footsteps' pollution. No refuge could save the hireling and the slave from the terror of the flight or the gloom of the grave. And the star-spangled banner in triumphant does wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. And thus be it ever where freedom shall stand between their loved home and the war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace, may the heaven-rescued land praise the power that has made and preserved us a nation, God. Then conquer we must when our cause is just, and this is our motto: in God is our trust. And the star-spangled banner in triumphant shall wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave. That's a little bit long to sing in a national anthem, so the first stanza we're all familiar with. And he had good connections with the papers and all that stuff, and this whole thing went out all over the country, and everybody loved it. It speaks good of the country, as opposed to our current media and administration. We were set up to be able to worship God. Most of the people here weren't too fond of England. That's why they left, or the UK in general. I mean, the Church of England had a broad reach, and it was very controlling. And the government and the church were one and one. And the government got stronger due to King James because he wanted to have more power than the church. So he wrote the King James Bible, where they softened some words. They didn't take things out, but they softened the translation in favor of the government. Now most of that's been fixed, so the King James is fine. But I guarantee you in first century Middle East, they didn't speak in King James English. I guarantee it. It does sound nice, but it's not the way they spoke. It is, however, one of the better translations because it is a word-for-word translation. So I'm defending, yet not defending the King James Version. I use the New King James as my primary source. But whatever Bible you read, if you really got to get down into a word for word, this is the word it is and this is the word we have to use the rest of our life, you better know the Bibles, plural, the different versions, and it would be helpful to know either Greek or Hebrew. Now I don't know a lot of Greek at all. I can read some Hebrew, but I don't use it enough to be proficient in it. But I can look things up, and we have a strong concordance tied into my digital version of the Bible. Which is original King James, not translated. So I use it. Whatever is comfortable, whatever will bring you to God is what you want to use. It's when you try to defend it, you've got to be careful and know its origin. So, on this day of independence, we remember one of the key players. We have many in our country, whether it's give me liberty or give me death, Henry. A lot of things happened in this country to make it free. A lot of people have fought over the years to make it free. Israel has had to fight. They're fighting right now. They're going through one of the northern towns, cleaning out terrorist cells because they're getting wind of something big coming. And so they're cleaning it out. And they're going to go to the other cities in the other parts of Israel where they were talked into land for peace, which doesn't work. You give the land to the poor people so they have a place to live, and the terrorists move in and take over. And the poor people can't stop them. So the terrorists live there and use it as a launching site to attack Israel. So the land for peace didn't work, it backfired. So Israel is no longer going to do land for peace, I guarantee it. All right, I hope you've had a good Fourth, or will have a good Fourth when you see this. Enjoy the fireworks that represent what we just read. And there were other battles besides this one. Timing is everything too. We pretty much won the war against Britain because they were also in a war with France, who's closer and more of a threat. And we didn't have a navy. We hired mercenary ships to fight for us and basically told them to go out on British ships and take them over. You can claim their property. And so a lot of these pirates, as they became wealthy doing this. And in typical fashion, the United States at the end declared that they don't know who these pirates are. They must be pirates who must go out and arrest them. We turn on our allies too many times. That's one of our constraints. That's keeping us from being a truly godly nation. So, enjoy the day where we celebrate what we used to be. I'm hoping this is our last Independence Day. It's possible. So celebrate it appropriately. As a minimum, celebrate it in the way that it used to be, because it's never going to go back. see you in the clouds. God bless. Taking a look at this end of the camp, this is where the fireworks were. Way out over those trees in a distance, so it was too hard for me to film. I'm hoping we're going to get some more closer, but I may come up here and try to film on the 4th weekend. And I had this yesterday, and there's a small fisherman coming in over here. A couple of boats tied up, people enjoying the weekend. Dog out there running around. More campers here, and my tents are over there in the distance under the trees. Have a great 4th, everyone.